going into game 2, this deck, oh man, I love this deck. I absolutely love Garen, Aurelion Sol, this sort of control type deck right now. I think it's amazing. I think it leaves so much room for you to potentially outplay your opponent. And real quick, so again, going against the Overwhelm, just some matchup notes. So we're favored. I mean, this is the easier of the two matchups now. We're favored 100%. We have a bonkers amount of heal in this matchup. We have 3 Guiding Touch, 3 Star Shaping, and 3 Sunforger. Solari Sunforger, if you guys don't know what it does, it's a new card. Daybreak, it gets Lifesteal. It's a 5-4 for 4 mana. Pretty good. 4 mana, Lifesteal. Pretty good, not gonna lie. When you're playing things like single combat, you can also double up on the lifesteal. So, very good in aggro matchups. Very good versus this particular deck as well. We will also eventually have, by the way, plenty of larger units than our opponent. Eventually, Aurelion Sol generates the Celestials. You have the Eclipse Dragon generating other dragons. And the Eclipse Dragon itself is pretty big. Eventually, we'll actually have some pretty strong units to contest what our opponent is going to have on the board, like a Tryndamere. Also note, throughout the tournament, I went of the mentality of, like, play the harder deck to win first. So that's why I went with the Callisto Lucian deck first. I wanted to play the harder deck, the deck that I knew I would have a harder time winning with. So, Mulligan. So, Hush, you almost definitely want for later on in the game because it's going to blow out some sweet, sweet Battle Furies. Basically, 2 mana to blow out an 8 mana card seems really good. Garen, not too great early on because of things like Yetis trading with it quite nice. And Solari Shield Bearer, man. Woo! So good. So good. It shuts down entire attack turns just on its own as a 3/6 when it comes out. And not only that, when it comes out with Grand Plaza, it's a 4/7 with Challenger. That for 2 mana, that's really freaking good. So in the early stages of the game, though, with this deck, you want to play really reactive, which is why I didn't play the Egghead before my opponent summoned something there. Now that I know it's an Aversion Sentry, I can go ahead and play the Egghead. I'll chip the 1 damage because I don't honestly care if they trade with anything. Otherwise, I'm okay with banking that 3 spell mana. It feels really good to get that 3 spell mana under your belt early. Here, all right, this is another great example of kind of some of the key critical decision making in a controlled deck. Okay, so knowing I have Star Shaping in hand and Guiding Touch, I have plenty of heal. I'm not worried about lethal anytime soon. My opponent is representing right now 4 damage. I could play Shield Bearer and shut down the entire attack, but then my opponent just won't attack. So I'm really not getting any value out of the Shield Bearer, and I don't really care about shutting down 4 damage. Like, I'm okay with taking 4 damage, right? If I block the Sentry. So you don't want to play Shield Bearer here. You know your opponent is not gonna develop anything else on the board, so there's no reason to commit anything. Sure, worst case, I burn 1 mana. Oh gee, I feel so bad. Like, I'm still up 3 spell mana on my opponent. I actually decided Guiding Touch now anyways, which you could argue I'm not in love with that, but, you know, we did it. So we're playing mana efficient here. I'm not crazy about it, but it is what it is. Now, this turn, really awkward going into the mid game here. Man, maybe it's just turn 4 in general. It's like this deck too. Turn 4 is just really weird. I know my opponent needs to develop to threaten any sort of aggression. All right. Unfortunately, the Sunforger still doesn't feel great since I'm not even getting the full value out of the lifesteal. I'm only getting 3 out of the 5, right? But at this point, I'm forced into playing it because I don't want to lose too much tempo on board. I'm not actually expecting my opponent to trade these Outriders with the Sunforger, to be honest with you. I do opt, I think, for the Shield Bearer. Do I go for the Shield? See, now this feels a little bit better. Now this, if I do play the Shield Bearer, does shut down a lot more damage than it would have the other turn. No, I do go with the Solari Sunforger. Okay, so Sunforger it is. I don't go for the Shield Bearer because it could still potentially shut down an attack turn. And that's really what you kind of want to use the Shield Bearer for. You want to use it when your opponent has the attack token to shut down an attack turn. So that's why we decided to hold back on it again. We trade the Sunforger, which feels kind of bad, I'm not going to lie, but it is what it is. We're still at 20. We're feeling okay. We'll play this the Shield Bearer now. And this non-buffed Yeti, green light on the Shield Bearer, baby. Oh man, this is such a good turn to shut down. It's gonna trade with the Trapper. If he attacks with the Trapper, not gonna attack with the Trapper. He's gonna attack with the 5/5 just to like see what I do. And honestly, I don't care about the damage getting pushed onto the Shield Bearer. My opponent again doesn't have removal other than single combat. They're not gonna single combat this Shield Bearer after the fact. So this is just gonna be a 3-1 that sticks around to eventually trade with something, right? Now, that's kind of good for my opponent. Not gonna lie, healing up that Yeti again, so that feels a little bad. Now I need to get into that stage of, okay, my opponent's starting to develop a board. I got to start to do some things here. We got to start to figure something out, start to develop our own units. And Garen, I think, does now need to come down, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because Garen, it just feels so bad in this matchup because there's so many big units. It doesn't feel terrible this turn because I do still have 4 mana up to play, you know, Hush and Pale Cascade or Single Combat or whatever. But it does get out the Sejuani. And getting Sejuani out a defensive turn, especially against this sort of deck, is very, very crucial. Because otherwise, like, let's say it came out on this attack turn, they could do it on the Egghead Researcher, and now you're pushing a lot of damage. And as much as I have heal, I don't have a million heal. I need to try to stay at least somewhat healthy, and having an opponent pull my 1/1 to deal 8, 9, 10 damage does not feel good whatsoever. So it's alright. I got the Vulnerable out. The concern with this attack coming up is Battle Fury. And again, single combat Battle Fury were basically the two things I'm worried about 100% in this matchup. So this is actually a very interesting turn. I was actually considering about pausing here to ask you guys what you thought, but I am going to go over my thought process here because there is almost certainly a few different ways that you could have played this turn out. My first thought is we could have played a Judgment, but Judgment will likely get blown out, if not by a Battle Fury. Like, let's say we play Judgment. My opponent can Battle Fury the Sejuani. Now you're pushing 11 damage. You save the Sejuani. I don't know if they really want to do that. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's pushing enough damage. And I do save my units if that's the case. They could Battle Fury even like this Yeti. And now all of a sudden I'm taking 13 to the face. Also does not feel good. What I'm really worried about is more Troll Chants. If they do even one Troll Chant, is going to feel really bad. Battle Fury also does not kill this Sejuani. And I don't have anything else to pair with the Battle Fury to do that. I could Hush and Judgment, but that's committing my entire mana with my opponent still having 8 up. So I need to do something that allows me to make an impact on board right now and still have reactive plays. So, which is actually one thing, I think I was going to go over this later too, but yeah. So here, I'm going to make a note real quick. That note is, this deck, one of the reasons I like it is having a lot of 2 mana options. We have Hush, Single Combat, Guiding Touch, and Pale Cascade, all as I think 3 ofs. And that means almost every turn you're going to have multiple reactive options. Your opponent is almost always going to be committing more mana than you to make an impact on the board, and you can commit less mana to have a bigger impact is the idea, right? That's why I really love these cards in general. Very cheap, very efficient, very impactful. And it's one of the reasons why I think this deck is not only really good, but just really fun to play right now. So with that said, the route that I take is... I took notes. I'm going to go again. So again, hey, I went over all this for you guys, all right? So we're going to go with the Hush. We're going to go with the Pale Cascade, and then we're going to priority back over, right? So now we have 6 mana to deal with a Battle Fury. So what this currently does is it kills the Sejuani. We take 9. A-okay with taking 9. We trade away the rest of the board. We also level up, or sorry, no, this would be the first strike for Garen. I don't know why it highlights the arrow before he strikes the first time. Kind of weird. Fun fact. So now we wait. We get our opponent to make some sort of play. So Hush and Pale kills Sejuani and still leaves up another Hush and both single combats and a Pale Cascade. They're like any combination of all 3 of those, or any combination of those 3 cards, basically my opponent can't do anything. Even if there's another Fury in the north, even if there's a Battle Fury, even if there's 2 Troll Chants, I'll probably still have the outplay on my opponent. And that feels really good to have that kind of power with such cheap cards in hand. And we still have some top end and Eclipse Dragon left too, so it's not like our whole hand is just super cheap, stuff that we're just gonna use in one turn, and now we're out of cards, we're out of resources. So if Battle Fury is played on anything else, so after I've made this play, let's say Battle Fury gets played on the Yeti, and that means I'm going to be taking, what is that? 13, that's 17 damage to face. That's no. Then we can hush the Battle Fury Yeti. Like, if we actually really like needed to, right? So that's the other thing with Battle Fury is they're out of mana, which means I can kind of freely do whatever I want with the board. So this was really trying to bait out a Battle Fury. I am assuming my opponent probably thinks I don't have another Hush in hand. So that's like, all right, go for it. Play Battle Fury. My opponent doesn't have Hush. We're good to go. I was kind of hoping they'd play it. It didn't. It is what it is. I don't preemptively single combat here because A, my Garen's going to die, and B, you almost always want to play it reactively too. So, and I think this ends up going through. I don't know if my opponent even actually does anything here. No, they don't. But there's another play I want to see if you guys are able to figure out why I made it here in just a second after they eventually send this attack through here. And this was kind of, I think, the game-changing play. Okay, no, it is going to be Troll Chant. So this actually allows me to... Yeah, okay, this I'm actually okay with. I don't care about this. This just allows Sejuani to live, and I could care less. It just got an additional Troll Chant on my opponent. It's one less Troll Chant I have to worry about. I think that's the second one they've played thus far. So I still feel like I'm in pretty good shape. I have more cards than my opponent as well. Now, why don't I play... I have 6 mana. Why don't I play Star Shaping here? I'm going to pause it again, let you guys try to figure that out. Again, I guess if you put it in the comments below, you can wait until I tell you the answer, right? Don't do that. Don't be that guy or that girl, all right? So, all right, Star Shaping. I could just play it there to be mana efficient. I heal face. I need some healing right now. I'm down to 11. Feels pretty good. I get a Celestial. Feels pretty good. Why don't I do that? Well, my Garen's at 1. That is perfect target for something like a single combat. Now, my opponent does know I play Guiding Touch. Probably aware of Guiding Touch, which is why they might choose a different target. I'm not sure. But even 2 Guiding Touch right now does not save my Garen. Now, what does Star Shaping do if I play it on my Garen? If they single combat, even on the Yeti, right? Which the Yeti, I mean, they should just do it on the Kindly Tavern Keeper, I guess. But even if they do it on the Yeti, 5 damage is not enough to kill this Garen right now because it still has the Pale Cascade buff till the end of the turn. So if I Star Shaping Garen, it actually survives a single combat, and my opponent levels my Garen for me. Thank you! I could save my other single combat. So that's what we're going to get here, I think, in a second. We actually get the Tavern Keeper first. I pass back again, not playing the Star Shaping in a second, which I think this is where I meant to pause it for you guys. So let's just imagine that I asked you here once my opponent tapped down to 3 mana. Just imagine that. And this is why I passed back. And we get the single combat. It's going to be on the Yeti. And this felt so good right now. I double check, make sure the Pale Cascade is still on, because when you're in tournaments, yep, that's what you do. You double check and doubt damn near everything, thinking that you know what your opponent could have left at 1 mana, but there's still going to be that one card that you missed. In this case, just double checking to make sure that I remember Pale Cascade was there. So we are going to get the level Garen, which means we're rallying going into next turn. And that is, I don't think, a huge deal. We get Grand Plaza finally. So, actually, Grand Plaza will be a big deal on the next turn. We actually rally next turn because we have the attack token anyways, right? So, Eclipse Dragon is just developing a blocker here. Also reduces the cost of the Immortal Fire, so no reason to play the 8 mana Immortal Fire and put ourselves outside of the single combat mana just to get the elusive attack thing. Like, I don't think we're really worried about pressuring our opponent that much, because that we're not going to end the game quicker than they can end the game. We need to live, right? If that makes sense. We still are going to need multiple attacks. If they just attack us all out on this turn and we, have something with lower health, they could just go over the top and kill us. So we just want to develop that additional blocker. We start drawing kind of the Grand Plaza Grizzled Ranger that we kind of wanted way earlier in the game, not going to lie. That combo is busted. It's so OP, by the way. So here, another Hush is probably going to come in pretty big. We have another Battle Fury that was played on the Kindly Tavern Keeper. We can go ahead and Hush it. The Garen will kill it. And Pale Cascade onto the Eclipse Dragon actually trades quite nicely with the Sejuani as well. And again, all right, played both. Pass it back on over. And now guess what? We have two single combats that we can play in hand in case our opponent does some funny shenanigans, right? And that is actually the next thing that I think I'm going to pause in just a second and ask you guys, depending on if I remember what my opponent did here towards the end. I think so. Yeah, one. Okay, so when my opponent, I think they play another Battle Fury on the Sejuani, if I remember correctly, which that Battle Fury, okay, this means that I am now looking at, from the Sejuani Overwhelm, 8 damage, plus 3 from the Tavern Keeper. That is exactly lethal. Okay? Now, I believe I play both single combats here. My question is, why do I play both single combats? I think I single combat the Garen into the Sejuani, and I single combat the Eclipse Dragon into the Sejuani to kill it. Which technically a Troll Chant could have still won my opponent the game, but I can't really play around that at this point. It just is what it is. Which, wait, 9. No. Actually, Troll. Yeah. Troll Chant, because it would have reduced the attack on one of them. Troll Chant, I think, would have won my opponent the game here. So, why do I do this? Pause for questions. Put it in the comments below. If I just single combat the Garen and then let the Eclipse Dragon just kill the Sejuani, I'm still going to take the Overwhelm damage. Whereas the single combat does not calculate the Overwhelm damage. So now the Sejuani is actually going to die before any damage is calculated, and I only end up taking 3 for the turn. Now, granted, the hushed Kindly Tavern Keeper still lives, which feels kind of bad because my Garen is dying, but I got to do what I got to do. And honestly, I don't feel too bad about that. Want to know why? Because I got one of the most broken combos in the game right now in my hand, and this is why this deck is so good mid-game. Grand Plaza and Double Grizzled Ranger, these double Grizzled Rangers literally won me this game at the end here. This is OP. This, like, the fact that one Grizzled Ranger allows me to kill this 12-8 Kindly Tavern Keeper is insane. 2 Grizzled Rangers basically just makes me able to deal with the entire board. And at this point, not really worried what my opponent has in hand. Yeah, sure, they could have a top deck Battle Fury or something like that, but I mean, at this point, they've played, 2 Battle Furies, 2 Troll Chants. I'm not really worried about too much at this point. This just lets me clear the field. And this is why this combo is broken. You have the Stout attack, and then the Loyal Badger Bear that comes out also gets +1/+1. So we do end up, I think, taking this game home on the next turn, because now we have kind of our late game, right? I mean, our hand literally represents what the late game of this deck should be. A leveled Garen, so you're getting attacks every turn with Grand Plaza on the field, which feels really good. And then you have Giant Celestials and Aurelion Soul. Aurelion Soul actually is pretty capable of leveling in this particular deck as well, with something like the Eclipse Dragon. And yeah, we take home our first round of the tournament.